If you played For Honor for any amount of time, you know it can be a very fun and rewarding game. The fast-paced combat, coupled with animations that simultaneously show off the skill and deadliness of these warriors, creates a combat experience unlike any other game. On the other hand though, you know just as well as me that the game just doesn't always go your way. With just how much random bullshit can happen during one match, For Honor can be a very frustrating, rage-inducing experience. What can be said without a doubt though is that For Honor is very complicated, especially if you're new to the game, or came back from a longer break. In this video I will help you untangle the often confusing complexity of this game by going over the most crucial fundamentals. If you want to improve your overall chances of winning by becoming a more advanced player, stick around, because I can guarantee that following my advice in this video will help you gain the upper hand on the battlefield. And for all the combat veterans watching, feel free to tag along, because I can promise you that going over the fundamentals can never hurt. So, with nothing more to say, let's just get into it, shall we? The undeniably most important thing that even some pro players still incorrectly evaluate is the importance of momentum and how to correctly capitalize on it to swing any fighting situation into your favor. But what actually is momentum? To put it into the simplest terms, momentum just means whose turn it is to attack. Think of this mechanic similarly to Pokemon. Combat in that game is turn-based, meaning somebody gets to attack first, and after their action, the other player gets to attack. In For Honor, this system is way more dynamic than just standing there and taking damage. Even though it sometimes doesn't feel that way. One of the best loading tips I've ever read is: remember, licking doorknobs is illegal on other planets. Hold on a second, that's the wrong script. Oh, here it is. If you're blocking, you're losing. When you're defending, you're forced into a position in which you have to react to and oftentimes correctly read your opponent to avoid damage. But being forced on the defensive is part of the game. No matter how good you play, you just won't always be able to constantly bully your opponent. What differentiates pros from beginners though, is how well they can go back on the offense and how well they can maintain their offensive. There are some obvious things that change momentum, like parrying your opponent, but there are also some often overlooked momentum changes, like blocking a non-enhanced light, or even countering a guard break from your opponent. What I mean with momentum in this scenario is, if your opponent is constantly spamming light attacks, your attack will still hit him first, because you have the momentum. You have the frame advantage. Both of you input your light attack simultaneously, yet yours connects first. My tip for beginners is: respect your opponent's momentum. Attacking while your opponent is wailing down on you just won't work. Remember, by blocking a light or parrying an attack, the roles switch, giving you the option to get back at your opponent. Only with a reliable defense will you be able to attack. For advanced players, take with you one thing: momentum means winning. Stay unpredictable, mix things up. Know which attacks stop your combo, meaning which chain will put you back into neutral. Something you also have to keep in mind is, never rely on the same strategy to open a fight. If I know you will only be doing bash attacks as openers, I will adapt by throwing out more attacks in neutral, in hopes to interrupt you. And keep in mind that blocking can sometimes also lead to you gaining momentum. Is your opponent constantly doing lights? Block one, and it is your turn to go on the offensive. Let us actually overanalyze the background footage in order for me to show you guys what I actually mean by having momentum. This background footage perfectly shows off what momentum actually means. I will leave both hero portraits up in order to visualize who has momentum. If a portrait is grayed out, it means that hero currently doesn't have momentum. I start off the fight with an unlocked zone attack, meaning my opponent basically has no way to parry this attack. I immediately go for a feint mix-up here, which my opponent incorrectly reacts to. As you can see, I did not input a follow-up zone attack. This means we are back to neutral. Since my opponent isn't very happy about me beating the shit out of him, he immediately tries to capitalize on the neutral game by throwing out a light attack. It didn't work out for him. I go for another unblockable mix-up, he guesses correctly. We're back to neutral. I know he will try to interrupt my zone attack with a guard break. Therefore, I do a light. My follow-up light gets blocked. He has momentum. He knows soheis do a lot of zone attacks, so he immediately goes for another guard break. I have momentum here, but have too little stamina to utilize it. So I stay on the defensive. A few failed guard break attempts later, I have enough stamina for my zone attack and smack him over the head with it. I am yet again missing stamina, so back on the defensive for me. My opponent yet again tries his luck with a light attack, which I just block. Since I know my opponent cannot do another light attack to interrupt me, I do a front step bash and go into another mix-up. And here my opponent has finally had enough and just inputs a random zone attack and gets killed for it. Since I've already talked a lot about being on the defensive, this perfectly links to my next point. On the defensive, you have the option between a dodge and a parry. So, which one should you choose? An elementary problem. Both of these options mean you're committing to something, but both of these options lead to different rewards, based on the situation. For beginners, dodging generally is easier, but that shouldn't discourage you from parrying attacks. Knowing when to dodge takes a lot of matchup experience, which will come naturally with more playtime. For the time being, focus on parrying attacks. Dodging should only be reserved for bash mix-ups. A bash mix-up is an attack that has no guard direction, meaning there is no way for you to block or parry it. There are two variants of bash attacks in the game right now. Technically three, but let's disregard that one. Firstly, the more annoying ones. Front step bashes. Just like the name implies, these can be performed by pressing guard break during your front step animation. These front step bashes are too fast to be reactable, meaning you will have to dodge to the side when your opponent does a front step. Or in other words, you will have to anticipate that your opponent is going to do a bash attack. Almost every character in the roster has a front step bash that mostly leads to just little follow-up damage with no way to continue their momentum. And then there are charged bashes. These charged bashes are overall way more lethal, since most of them lead to greater damage. The thing that differentiates these charged bashes from regular bashes is that the animation will give you enough time to react. Sounds good, right? The problem is, These attacks have multiple timings on which they can be performed. To put it simply, this means you can either dodge to one timing or the other timing. But if, let's say for example, you dodge to a timing at charge level 1 and your opponent does a charge level 3 bash, he will hit you. Charged bashes are generally always guard break punishable, meaning if you guess correctly, you will get to dish out some hate on your opponent. For advanced players, let me state the obvious. Getting a guard break leads to more damage than parrying a heavy attack. If you're already willing to parry an attack from your opponent, keep in mind if that attack is a combo chain finisher. Two common examples that come to mind are Kensei or Ocelot. Both of these characters cannot continue their chain after finishing their attack, meaning if you dodge that attack, they're wide open to be guard broken. There are many more examples like this, but there are also some heroes that simply do not have any guard break vulnerability after their mix-up. Look at Sohei, for example. Even though his soul attacks are his combo finishers, he can still flow into another zone attack, making him invulnerable to guard breaks. Knowing which character is guard break punishable and which is not is the key to maximize your lethality. What generally can be said though is you should avoid guard breaks when you're outnumbered. The amount of time you waste just for this animation will be more than enough for all your opponents to do their strongest attacks against you. And one more tip. If you are in revenge and get a guard break, do not throw your opponent. I know it leads to more damage if your opponent actually lands on their ass.
Oh, what is he doing?
But getting bashed, or sometimes even just getting hit regularly, will take you out of the throwing animation, denying you any form of damage. And now, to something that I still struggle with sometimes. Positioning. Holy fuck, I hate my positioning. Just how many unnecessary deaths can be avoided by just moving your fat ass somewhere else cannot be overemphasized. For a better visualization, let's look at some zones real quick and let me show you what I mean. The areas I have marked in red are death areas. Standing there substantially increases your risk of dying because of one small little mistake you make. Ledges can obviously lead to you getting thrown off there. And vantage points can lead to you getting shit on by somebody trying the hardest to cosplay Ezio. Keeping these spots in mind during the heat of the battle is difficult for someone who is already getting their brain fried, just trying to comprehend what is going on. But this skill will save your life. For players that have already mastered this skill, keep hero-specific death zones in mind. Of course, fighting next to a wall could lead to you getting a higher damage punish when you get guard broken. But certain heroes excel near walls. Look at Centurion and Jormungandr. Sand will be able to get an insane damage punish just for one heavy parry, and Jorm will be able to increase his unblockable damage just because he knocked you against the wall. Positioning doesn't just mean not standing near environmental hazards. It also means that you look for positions that give you an advantage. You will surely have had this exact situation. An enemy that no matter how hard you try to hit them, you can't seem to damage that slippery bastard. That opponent is using positioning to avoid your attacks. The basic concept of this is trying to draw a line between you and your opponents, forcing them to stand in front of each other. If you manage to get one opponent in front of the other, you're technically only fighting one opponent, since it is very difficult to hit through your teammates. This is the highest level of ganking. In this exact position, only the Shugoki will be able to attack me. If in this situation I would have dodged to the left side, I would have still kept this advantage. This situation not only gives me a great defensive advantage, but also an offensive one. Positioning yourself so that multiple opponents constantly stumble into their own way and constantly hit each other out of their combos is a great way to increase your survivability without actually using any attack or blocking. It really works wonders. These are the main things I wanted to say. I can guarantee you that by following these simple tips I have given you in this video, your overall skill and lethality will increase substantially. I hope you enjoyed the things I have said, and I really hope that you could follow everything and find a proper way to implement these tips into your gameplay. With all of that being said, and with my rambling finally coming to an end, I just have one more thing to say. Watch yourselves out there, okay?